All right, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for coming from the panel discussion into our last session, which is hosted. Again, you'll see a familiar face here by Trevor Matthews. So he's doing double time. He's doing overtime with us today. So we really appreciate it. So I'm just going to quickly do an intro for Trevor. He did a pretty good intro for himself before. I'm going to try to match that. We'll see whose is better. I think most people are going to go with Trevor, but we'll see. So Trevor Matthews has evolved from a pioneering technician to a globally recognized authority in commercial refrigeration and compressor systems. Trevor is the founder of refrigerationmentor.com, a trailblazing platform that revolutionizes commercial refrigeration technician training. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Trevor Matthews for his session. Again, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We will monitor them as we have been doing so far. And if you have any issues as well, just make sure to refresh your page. That normally kind of fixes any audio or technical issues that you have. So Trevor, take it away.
Well, welcome. What's up, everyone? Great to see you all again. I love the names in the chat. I usually like seeing everyone's face. I only can see names, so I know quite a few of you in there. So welcome, Trevor Matthews here. I know many of you. We're going to talk about some servicing commercial refrigeration systems using A2Ls, some of the stuff that I've learned, how to make it easier for you if you're a technician, if you're a contractor, if you're a manufacturer or sales rep. It doesn't really matter. I'm here to help support the industry. If you want to get your phone out and scan that QR code right there in the bottom right, you can learn a little bit more about Refrigeration Mentor. Okay, things that we need to know. Let's dive in a little bit deeper. How do I skip here ahead? There we go. So a little bit about me deeper. I got a podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, diving in on the technical aspects and the personal development aspect for refrigeration technicians all over the world. Heavily involved on helping uplift the industry. That's what we do at Refrigeration Mentor. We are a training organization, so we train on advanced service systems. We do chiller trainings. We do supermarket trainings, CO2 trainings, even A2L training. So if you want to contact me, scan that middle one and reach out, because we build curriculum for contractors and businesses. We partner with some manufacturers and do their training, like the chiller training that we do. It's such an amazing thing. This industry is awesome, and it is evolving. That's what we're diving into today. We're going to get into some A2Ls and the things that I've seen. What I've learned over the decades of doing refrigeration is that I wasn't always doing it right, because I didn't know. I just learned from the people who learned before me. And not that we were doing it wrong, we just didn't know. And this is some of the things that I want to talk about, is getting into some of the best practices that we can do, the best that we can do, and following the different standards. I try to follow all around the world. Like, I got friends everywhere, refrigeration professionals, from technicians to business owners, and I try to ask them, how do we be more safe? How do we help our technicians be more confident? How do we help fix the problem quicker for that end user so we can go home safely as a technician? I got tons of stuff on social media. So if you're not following me on LinkedIn, head to LinkedIn, Instagram, tons of YouTube videos, over 700-800 YouTube videos on different refrigeration topics. So love to see some of those. Okay, let's dive into some of the common fears of A2L. I was down in Orlando at my good friend Brian Orr, so HVAC School podcast. Go ahead and listen to him. Lots of great content. So I was at a symposium earlier in the year, and I did a talk on taking the fear out of low GWP refrigerant. So I talked about CO2, I talked about A3, and I also talked about A2L refrigerant. So some of the common fears is flammability and fire risk. It is, everyone calls it mildly flammable. We should just call it flammability. It doesn't matter to me. There is risks. There's risks with 410. There's risks with R32. There's risks with 404. There's risks with POE oil, as I mentioned in the panel. And this, I didn't understand. I've seen it, but when I started doing research on it and start to understand, so you see Purdue University, that they do some great research papers. So I highly recommend go look them up. Like, from researchers on refrigeration, some of the top minds and experts from around the world write these papers. And sometimes it's really dry. Honestly, it is dry. And so I try to push through and find the good stuff for all you. But this was a good one to help me understand that the stuff that you're working with today is still flammable, to understand. When I was working in the field, I did a supermarket refrigeration. That was my background. So I've done a lot of supermarket renos, for an example, and service work. And I remember seeing flames coming out of pipes sometimes, 3-4 feet flames. So what does that mean? We should have a fire extinguisher with us. That's the best practice. This can happen. Maybe you don't know, like you got all the refrigerant out, but that suction line could be full of oil doing a reno. There's just one example. Safety protocols. So like, okay, fire extinguisher. Well, job hazard assessment, something that I wasn't really good at. I'm like, honestly, when I first started out, I'm like, oh, why do I have to do this? This is so annoying. As I get more experience now, when I'm talking to students in my class or when I'm talking to technicians, the value of doing a job hazard assessment, which I know a lot of times it's just check it, but the complacency is when people get hurt, and it doesn't matter if it's A2Ls, A3s, A1s, CO2, ammonia. We really got to step it up and level up for the people that are in the industry. Okay. Explosion risks in confined spaces and new tools and standards. So these are some of the common fears. But all these things are no different than what we have on here, are no different than what we used in the past. Because if you're a professional out there and you work on refrigeration systems now, you're not going to go put a torch or a flame on a running system to unsweat it. You need to be properly trained. It doesn't matter where you're at in the world. You should be properly trained to work on systems. That's why we have the red seal. That's why we have codes and regulation. So no different with A2Ls. We're not going to do those things. Okay. And we'll dive into some new tools in a little bit and some of the differences. So let's move on here. Okay, some of the big things on system updates. I just threw a few here. No retrofits. It's like going from, if any of you worked on the 410, it wasn't like, okay, all of a sudden I got an R22 system. Let's go put 410. It's not going to be compatible. The first off, you got mineral oil and POE oil. 410's a higher pressure. So when that transition happens, some of you may have been around for that transition. I can see some names on there, and some of you may have not. Like I'm not in that transition. I started with 448, 449 when I got into the industry. Now, once again, there's no retrofits. The same with CO2, A3s, propane, or A2Ls. So you have to reconfigure that system. Okay. Leak sensors are needed. So depending on the size of the system, you're going to have something leak mitigation. And so depending on how big the box is that you're installing, depending on the system itself, you have to have potential leak detectors. Sensors just like you see down in the bottom corner. This was at AHR. I was hanging out with some of my friends from Tecumseh, and this is inside one of their coils. This is an A2L, and you're going to see standards like this having leak detectors. So now, as a technician in the commercial refrigeration space, you need to understand the system at a deeper level, because all of a sudden, if you're on call, the leak detector say faulty, but it says an alarm, it shuts off the liquid line and pumps out down the circuit and pump down the condensing unit, but it's because the leak detector is faulty. We need to understand that system at a high level. But it's no different than understanding the systems you're working at a high level now, with maybe a head pressure control on it, or with a time clock, or with a fan delay relay. So moving along in the industry as these technologies start to change, electronic valve, another example, is we need to understand the systems a little bit better. All of this stuff, I do tons of training and I talk about it in all my programs. If I built a program for you or your company, and just say you work on a specific manufacturers and those technicians are working on the same manufacturer, our baseline is going to be that manufacturer's manual. Diving in deeper, then understanding the sequence of operation of A2L versus A1. Do you know what? The sequence of operation is very, very similar. Okay, there may be these leak mitigations depending on how big the box is. As we continue to evolve, it's going to get easier and easier. But at this point, as we start to learn about it, we need to at least understand what we're getting into as a technician in there. Because going back to best practices is going to be your number one go-to. Then there's going to be a few of these additional things. Like I talked about in the panel, understanding how to do nitrogen purge before you unsweat anything. So you lay down a leak detector on one end, and then you blow nitrogen until that leak detector stops. When that leak detector stops, then we know there is no more refrigerant in that system. That's for a natural refrigerant, so A3s. So what do we need to do now with an A2L? Well, we need to evacuate that refrigerant anyway. So we have to take it out of the system and put it into a recovery cylinder. After we do that, purge some nitrogen through it. It is an extra step and it's more work. I know, but let's do it right so it's safe for you. And as we start to teach the next generation of technician, we want them to be service excellence. It is harder and it's more work, but I promise you it pays off in the end. Red cap service valves. So we've seen this in A3s, for an example. And if any of you work on A3s or propane, you have to put like little red sleeves on the tails of the process tube, for an example. This is to notify the technician, which there's already big placards on saying that they're mildly flammable or it's flammable inside there, so we understand. So there's red caps on them. There's going to be, and for sure, this stuff is going to evolve because this is the beginning of it. It's going to evolve because I've been hearing about A2Ls for over 10 years. It's not that it's new. It might be new to you listening now, but I've heard it for a long time coming into the industry. So it's not that this change is happening overnight. It is being rushed because some people thought it wasn't going to happen. And so it took some longer to get it, but it's happening now. Low GWP refrigerants. And I know for sure we just want to understand. So everyone's safe. That for me, it's safety. Okay. Electrical that could spark needs to be insulated. For an example, metal spades. I always like to use insulated ones anyway. So here's just another good example. And if you have any questions, put it in the chat. I'd love to see any questions that you guys have. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Well, what's some proper practices? Some of the proper practices. What happened to my picture? Let me see. Oh, there we go. There's another picture from my good friends at the HVACschool.com. Go ahead and check them out. Those guys are awesome down there. But purging your while you're brazing. This should be taught in every school. It should be number one thing a technician learns. It doesn't matter if it's residential, commercial, industrial. If you are brazing any pipes, you should be purging. Honestly, when I started out, we didn't do that because that wasn't something we had to do. I was working R22 mineral oil. The mineral oil didn't peel all the carbon off the inside of the pipe. Now, I've done lots of retrofits on R22, low temp and medium temp. So any of you that were doing commercial refrigeration, doing retrofit, you know what a pain it was after you did the retrofit, cleaning all the TX screens, cleaning the filter dryers, the oil separator, cleaning all that because it was just so plugged up and such a mess. Then over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, end users had to come up with the spec. They started to have to spec it so it was done properly. This stuff is not new to the industry. So how do you properly purge? Well, there's tools out there now where I used to use a float gauge, which is a great tool to use, a float gauge, but there's also easy tools that just you click on a purge and it will send a proper amount of nitrogen or inert gas through. So while you're brazing, so you can look at there the standard, what you're sending through. This here reduces that carbon inside those pipes. This is not a new practice, not a new practice at all. Like I said, I did it 15 years ago with 3-in-1 pipe, a 4-in-1 pipe, 2-in-1 pipe, 7/8, 5/8. And it's doing your best. It's doing your best to make sure that system is clean. Hopefully there's some people. How many people in the chat? I'd love to hear. Just say yes in the chat that you do or talk about purging while brazing. You're just going to yes, I do, yes, we do. Just throw that in the chat. I'd also love to know where I usually start this off, where everyone's from. So in the chat, just tell me where you're from. what part of the Canada or the world you're from listening today, because I'd love to know where everyone's from. Okay. Well, what's another thing that we need to do? Triple evacuation. What's triple evacuation? I remember I went to a school in Western, I went to a lot of refrigeration schools, but I went to one in Western Canada called SAIT to do my Red Seal. So I went to the school, I did my apprenticeship program out there. And while I was doing my apprenticeship, we were taught triple evacuation. That was 2005. That was 20 years ago. 2005, 2006. That was a while ago. Triple evacuation is not new. And honestly, I learned more about evacuation in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years now, than I ever did in my whole life. Evacuation is not new to the refrigeration industry. My good friend Jim Bergman, he taught me so many things, but I learned, he was doing a presentation one time. He's like talking about, maybe it was my friend Ty Brandeman and Jim Bergman, but they were talking about evacuation. A book that he had was from the 50s. The way they used to do it was pull it down to 100 microns. And then over the years, it got higher and higher. There were I read some manuals. Oh, if you get it below 2,000 microns, that's totally fine. In the industry, the lower the evacuation, the better. I was at an industrial site, a big industrial site, and they had it down to 17 microns. And I'm talking 6-in-1 pipe stainless steel. This was a CO2 system, not an A2L. But if they can pull it down there, there's no reason why we're not able to. The thing is, and I totally understand if you're a technician listening, I'm put under the gun, Trevor. I need to get this done and get to the next job and then to the next job and next time. And the customer's on me, my boss is on me. I understand. But you are the professional out there, and you do, it's pride in your work, service excellence. If it takes longer today, it may be quicker tomorrow. One of the practices that I learned from Jim Bergman, before you pressurize, before we get to this triple evacuation, purge that system first. And I'm like, what does that really mean, Jim? He was like, well, Trevor, if you have a ton of moisture in your system at this point, and you pressurize it up to, say, 500 psi, or whatever the manufacturer recommendation pressurization is, in the code, you got to follow whatever the code is, depending on where you're at around the world. But you pressurize that up, it can take those molecules, those moisture molecules, and squish them. And when it squishes them, it can actually cause droplets of water in your pipe or in your system. I'm like, I did not even ever think of that. So now when you do an evacuation, it takes longer. Okay. And I have lots of people on social media be like, oh, Trevor, you don't need to do triple evacuation. Just do a regular. I timed it this way, time it that way. I've done it both ways. And I've also found for myself personally, triple evacuation does work faster. Now, if it's a brand new system, some people say, well, you don't need to do triple evacuation. For me, triple evacuation, single evacuation, as long as you're getting down below 300 microns, 200 microns, 0.3 millibar, wherever you're from, 0.3 torr, you get it down deep, vacuum. Now we know there is no moisture in there, so you're not going to have to worry about non-condensables or something happening in the system. So let's get into what is a triple evacuation, how we do it. You evacuate down to 500 microns, break it with some dry nitrogen for 5 minutes. So different people from around the world tell me how they do it. Some people do a bulk charge, so they'll put it up to 50 psi or 3 bar, and then they'll let it all out, and then they'll do an evacuation. The way I always did it is I would have it nitrogen on the discharge line. I would blow it all the way through and come out the suction line. And until I felt it a little bit, it felt good. I'd be like, okay, this is purged out. Get the vac pump running again. Pull it down lower. Get down. It's called sweeping, and you get down to 500 microns, and then do a whole test. So depending on where you're at with A2Ls, because I've seen it where people say you have to do it for 60 minutes. I'm not sure if that's in a standard or if that's just a recommendation, but definitely do a hold test to make sure that, your microns don't shoot up. If they shoot up, we understand that there's probably, it's wet system still, or there's a leak in the system. This is a picture out of my good friends at Keep Right, one of their manuals, a deep evacuation. Mine, they say 500. I'm still lower than that. I still like 250, 200. And when I seen it down to 50, we only have so much time, right? So you want to make sure that you get the deepest vacuum as possible. It doesn't rise up, and make sure that you're using a micron gauge. You're using a micron gauge right here. Here's a good example. 385. This is actually off CO2 system I was working on. Pulling it down, I just took a picture of it. It's 385. It's so important to have a micron gauge. And in the chat, do you have a micron gauge? Do you use a micron gauge? This is a number one tool by a refrigeration technician when you're doing lots of installs, for sure. It has to be a tool in your tool kit. Okay, a few things here. I got a video here from my good friends at AC Service Tech. I have videos on this too, but I like to promote my friends out there making videos. Actually, in this video is my good friend Don Gillis as well. We used to work together, and this was from the AHR show. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Brennan, awesome. I'm glad you have a micron gauge. You need to use that and teach other people. Why I'm talking to you guys today, whatever I share with you today, please share this with other technicians, especially people coming up in the industry, or if they've been in the industry for a long time, share some of this knowledge. So A2Ls will have relief valves. So they'll like open up and then they will close, open up and they will close. They have left-handed threads. Adapters are available already. Transport upright. This is not anything new. This is what we should have been doing. And I totally understand when we talked in the panel, you can't be laying them down. Of course not. Does it happen out there? It does happen out there. So you want to talk to the people that are doing it, especially the new people. If you teach them right, then that's the only way they know. That's the only way they know. But when you do show them bad practices, that's when they start to learn the bad practice, or cutting corners. We don't want to cut corners in refrigeration. And I understand it's not always the technician or the contractors. Sometimes this is put on by the end user. I've seen it. I've seen the end user putting things onto the contractors, so they have to go to do it a certain way. Honestly, the best contractors out there do it right the first time, every time. That's it. They do it right the first time, every time. So that's service excellence. A1s, yellow and gray, recovery cylinders, A2Ls, red stripe. As we heard in the last session, the panel session, you got to recover. Here in Canada, it's normal. Around the world, it's not normal everywhere. You know, some places don't have recovery units or recovery cylinders. I have people that come into the Refrigeration Mentor community. So I have a free community for refrigeration technicians, and we meet up all the time to find out how do we help each other. And I have people in South America or different parts of the world, different parts of Europe, different parts of Asia. They come in and we talk about it, and they're like, we don't have the proper tools. We can't get recovery cylinders. We don't have them. So how do I help a customer? Here in Canada, we have the opportunity to do it. You're not supposed to be blowing off refrigerant into the atmosphere. You need to recover it. Okay. And this is standard. Do it right. And then if you do it right, you can actually reuse it, unless it's like a bad burnout or the refrigerant's bad, but you can potentially reuse that refrigerant. So that's what we did. That's the way I was taught. Take the refrigerant out. You do a replacement. You can put that refrigerant back in through a proper filter dryer. This is where your gauges are going to be the same gauges. You know, you're going to use the same hand tools as you've always been using. Now, maybe for your leak detector, it might be a little bit different. We'll dive into that in a little bit. The vac pump needs to be rated for A2Ls in the recovery unit. But if you don't have them at this point, you want to make sure that vac pump, for an example, if it's a new system, you don't even have A2Ls around anyway. Your cylinder can still be down in the truck. So you can pull that evacuation on a new system. You just have to remove the pump and make sure it's not on that system before you start to charge. If that makes sense. So follow your local codes, the regulation. And I know there's a lot going on right now, because I've talked to a lot of people around the world, and it's confusing in certain places. Well, everywhere it's confusing because there's so many different refrigerants. We just got 448, 449 retrofits done. For an example, 2016, when 404 started to be phased down and phased out, or phase down, starting to do 448 retrofit. So I'm doing a training with a contractor, and so the technician's like, Trevor, I just did a 404 retrofit to 448, 449, which is not an A2L. This is still an A1. And I'm saying, okay, well, the industry's starting to move. So in the supermarket world, we're moving to CO2. And well, depending on where you're at in the world, A2L. So like in Europe, A2L has been established for a long time. The one thing about the A2Ls is that they have PFAs and TFAs in them. And so there's more stringent regulations in different parts of the world. Will that come here? For sure, it's going to happen here. But at this point, we need to follow the safety protocols. And to me, it doesn't matter the refrigerant. I want technicians to be safe out there. That's my goal, is the people's safe, because we can't really change the regulations. As a technician in the field, we can only follow them and being safe, because we all want to go home safe to our family at night. Now let's take a quick watch of this video. Hopefully it plays, and hopefully let me know in the chat if you have sound, and if not, I'll send you guys the link in the chat.
They're getting away from the colors, and when you see the A2L refrigerants, we're going to have a red band around there. That's one thing we're going to look for. The other features you're going to start seeing now is the relief valves instead of the rupture disc. So the way the relief valve works, as we all know, it's going to relieve that little bit of pressure, kind of burp itself, if you will, and take it down and shut it down, even though it's just as safe as it was A1s. The other thing we're going to look at, too, is we're going with left-hand threads. So you'll need this little adapter there. So you take it off like that, and then you'll put it back on like this, okay? So again, it's left-handed threads, put that adapter on there. So when you see the red stripe and the adapter put on there, okay, you know you're dealing with A2L.
So you're going to be seeing this A2L.
That was my good friend Don Gillis and Craig Migliaccio from AC Service Tech. Go check out his video. So if any of you do residential stuff, he has so many amazing videos on heat pumps. He got a book too. I got it right here. So check out his heat pump book. Great people in the industry trying to share knowledge. And his newest book, updated with A2Ls on the more on the residential side. But
refrigerant.
Okay, let's see. Tools and techniques. So leak detection is important. Okay, so this is actually a CO2 leak detector, was sent in by my good friend Jason Hill. He does more industrial and CO2. But what we need to do, and what I learned from A3s, is that you should always have like an A3 leak detector when you're working around these systems. For us as refrigeration technicians, we should have a leak detector. We need a leak detector that can sense A2Ls. Okay, so I would be running that A2L leak detector as I'm purging out that system. So I read the Bitzer compressor manuals about A2L. I read the Copeland manuals about A2L, and a bunch of other manufacturers about it too. And they'll state in there how to do it step by step. Like I could go through how Bitzer does it or Copeland does it. One of the same things. Their guidelines are almost the same. So you need to purge out all that with inert gas or dry nitrogen to make sure that there's no A2Ls in the oil, similar to A3, before you cut into it. So you want to be safe. Pressure testing. Pressure testing is nothing new to our industry. Best practices, pressure testing the system so there is no leaks at all. Evacuation is even more important, right? Making sure there is no inert gas, or any gas in there. Inert gas, it doesn't matter, air in the system, get that out. And charging procedures, they're the same. Charging, you make sure there is nothing in the line. And I did mention that in the panel before when I did that TikTok video. Like here in Canada, we still can purge our lines, where in other parts of the world, you have to evacuate up to the cap. Is it tougher? Yes, because you need a 4-hose system. And I get some friends out there are going to try with a 3-hose system. It's a little bit difficult. But a 4 manifold gauge refrigeration gauge, because you need the one to go to the cylinder, one to go to the vac pump, and 2 onto your system, because you got to pull from both sides. Can you do it with a 3-port manifold gauge? I don't know yet, but I'm going to try to figure that out to make it easier for technicians out there in the field. Is it possible? It might be. Depending on how many fittings you can connect on. A refrigeration system, probably easier than a residential system. Keep the air out. PPE. So PPE is not changing. We need the safety glasses. We need the gloves. We need the steel toe boots. We want to be safe out there. I always want the technician to come in my training program to go home safely. Make sure that if you're working too many hours, it doesn't matter if it's an A2L. You want to be safe about that. You want to go home and see your family. And then most manufacturers provide specific guidelines to make it easy, step by step. Once again, a lot of my trainings that I do is that I'll train. So if a contractor hires me, I will find out that equipment they're working on, and I will make sure those technicians understand that piece of equipment inside and out. So when they're going out to install it, service it, troubleshoot it, they're super confident when they're on call or in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day. So they solve the problem quick. So they're confident, and they don't have to call their service manager for validation or a lead technician. They're confident fixing the problem. And this all comes back to training and education.
They're getting away.
What else? Okay. How to overcome fears. So I do a lot of training on CO2, A2Ls, A3s, a lot of different equipment, commercial refrigeration. So do it on supermarkets, chillers, CO2. The big thing is that you got to get into the manuals, watch YouTube videos from reputable sources. You can reach out to me. I'll put my contact into the chat so I can help you out with some of the people online who is really good sources for refrigeration information, especially the Refrigeration Mentor podcast and Refrigeration Mentor YouTube channel. But I got a lot of friends out across the industry making great videos. Ensure you have access to the proper tools. Once again, you want to find out what your codes and standards are. So you should have approved vac pump, approved recovery unit. And so a lot of times, in the commercial refrigeration space, the company will provide that, but sometimes it's not. And these are expensive tools, and I totally understand that. So you got to follow the standards though. So maybe this is something you talk about with the business owner to figure that out. Or maybe it's a payment plan with the wholesaler. I got some wholesalers on here. Maybe it's coming up with a payment plan so you can do it right the first time. Okay. Share your safety standards and procedures with others. What is your safety standards? How do you properly service a system? Right. A lot of technicians aren't really talking about the safety. We're talking about the technical thing. The safety thing is more important for me because I know I got hurt multiple times in refrigeration because I wasn't doing it safe. And I think this is something that I really push in a lot of my training programs is that you got to work safe out there. Because at the end of the day, if you're hurt, you can't make money for your family, and it's a problem. And then and another big thing, it doesn't matter if it's an A2L. You can get hurt with A1s. You can get hurt with any refrigerant. This is why we need to be safe. Another big one, write out your procedures and how you work in these refrigerants. So A2Ls, what is your procedure? You might not have one right now, but why not write it down? I use a lot of AI right now. So you can go to ChatGPT, it's free, and start working on your own procedure. You do need to have a refrigeration background. So don't be going in and say, oh, Trevor told me to use ChatGPT and give me that. No, you need to understand refrigeration when you're using AI and walk through it. And then when you write it out and you find this out, go to someone that you trust as a refrigeration expert and ask them, does this look like the right procedures for A2Ls, A3s, CO2s, HFCs? It doesn't matter. You want to have your own procedure. This is work though. You got to put this work in because I know the technicians that take my training programs and put the work in, those people are flying high. They're working on the A3s, A2L, CO2 system. It doesn't matter because they get the confidence to do it right and they understand the procedures that they are following from the different manufacturers or different trainings that they're in. Create your own troubleshooting guidelines. So if you start to work on A2Ls, start looking at different manufacturers. You might be working with one manufactured piece of equipment. Why don't you read another one? And then find out how do they do it? What is the difference between the two of those manufacturers and how they want you to install A2Ls? And then the next one, and then the TX valve manufacturer, and then the compressor manufacturer, and then the contactor manufacturer. And you start reading all this, and you know what? You're going to see so many similarities. It's like, oh, this makes sense. And then you're going to be able to troubleshoot way more systems as well. But it is putting the work in and then have open discussion and look for a mentor. That's it. And we like at Refrigeration Mentor, we have something called the Refrigeration Mentor Hub. like I said earlier, that a lot of technicians come in, share their knowledge. We talk about lots of different things. A2L is going to be a topic that I'm going to bring up now and talk about it a little more in our training programs because it's super important. And that's it. So some of the biggest things is follow best practices. Okay, when you're working on these systems, if it's a brand new install, it's same thing. You purge nitrogen through first. No, this is the first safety work. So how do you save it? Lockout, tagout is a big one. So make sure there's no power going to the system. When you're brazing, you're going to purge, and you're going to make sure you purge all the joints. Maybe the last one you might not be able to, but you're purging all the time. You're pulling, you're doing a pressure test. So before the pressure test, you purge. So you do some nitrogen through the things. Remember, I talked about that moisture, squishing up the moisture inside the system and potentially squish the moisture and cause droplets in there. So purge it, then do a pressure test. Follow the manufacturer's recommendation. What do you need and code as well. So the manufacturer might recommend something, but you have to follow whatever the B52 here in Canada, B52 guidelines and the refrigeration guidelines to make sure that you're pressure tested properly. Sometimes they say go with the manufacturer guidelines or UL guidelines. I got a bunch of numbers I wrote down here. Next step, after you do the pressure test and it holds, then you do your evacuation. You pull that deep triple evacuation. Then when you get into adding that refrigerant, it's going to be the same way you did 404 or 507. So important to do that. And then if you're doing a retrofit now, so all of a sudden a compressor failed. I've just read the compressor manuals. There's Copeland, Tecumseh, Bitzer scrolls I read. Those three for sure. I didn't check Dan. I didn't have time to get into the Danfoss one before the session. But what did they say? So recover the way you always recover in the cell, get all that refrigerant out. One of the things they said was purge. So get that nitrogen through, make sure you have the leak detector, nothing, then you want to cut it out. They all say they want to cut it out. So now I can remove that. One of the things though I read, and I'll have to talk with the wholesalers about this, is that you need to drain the oil before you send it back. Before it goes back to the manufacturers, that oil needs to be drained and separated before it's transport. I don't know if there's codes or regulations involved in that, but I read that in the compressor manuals that oil needs to be out. I have to talk to the wholesalers about that just to get an understanding, because that wasn't something, I think that was something you had to do before, but a lot of people didn't. They just brazed up the suction and discharge. Yeah, that's it, man. So scan here, reach out if you want to learn about more Refrigeration Mentor training, because we do a lot of it. We help a lot of technicians from Canada, US, all around the world. This is what we do. We specialize in training, refrigeration training, to get you to the next level in your career, your company's career. Awesome. I want to thank you all for taking the time. Hopefully there's some questions. I don't see any questions in the chat because I've been monitoring it, but you should have some questions if you're out there.
Yeah, we'll definitely give them a second to think if they have any questions. I know Brendan had one question. I think he asked, what's a PFA and a TFA? I don't remember exactly if you went into that specifically throughout any of your slides.
That's a whole training, in itself. But inside the refrigerants, there are chemicals, and these chemicals are not good for the environment. Okay, but they're not only in refrigerants; they're in other components as well. So I highly recommend go looking that up and find out a little bit more for yourself. There's a video if you watch. I've been to a bunch of natural refrigerant events. It's called Dark Waters. It'll be like, whoa, what's going on here? And it talks a lot about PFAs and TFAs. Europe, there's a massive push to phase down more refrigerants with high GWP or that have PFAs and TFAs. For me, at the end of the day, my role in the industry is to help train technicians to work safely and efficiently on the site. So,
all right. So yeah, I'll give it a couple more minutes. I just also wanted to ask, this is also just for my personal knowledge. I know through your YouTube page right now, do you have any current videos that discuss any A2Ls or any refrigerant? Do you have any videos of that sort so far, or are you looking to get into making more of those now as this transition becomes a little bit more popular and providing some more information for people out there in the industry?
Yeah, so I've done, there's podcasts. I don't get actual technical videos. I got technical talks. I've done some with Honeywell, Navac, Ty Brannaman, Esco Group. I've done lots of talks with them. So there's lots of podcasts out there on the YouTube channel, but I think just go to Refrigeration Mentor podcast and you can find it. Just write Refrigeration Mentor A2Ls, and I think 4 or 5 podcasts will come out. So while you're driving, you can listen in a little bit.
Perfect. Mark, I guess, is asking specifically because I know you've mentioned kind of utilizing AI for some resources. He asked, is AI always a reliable source of information on HVAC or on anything? So I guess it's kind of like to what Trevor mentioned, like obviously you have your initial information, your initial resource. This maybe is kind of just another, extended version of maybe using that as a, maybe more of like a think piece, kind of like as a brainstorming type of opportunity where you can kind of plug in some questions, ask it, and see what kind of inputs it gives back to you and kind of go off of there. I don't know if maybe you had any other additional things you want to add on to, like how specifically you're using maybe AI and how it's been helping you so far.
Yeah, so if you go to refrigerationbuddy.com, you can get on a waiting list. I'm doing a beta test already. I went through like with 10 or 15 technicians for specific refrigeration AI. So you can get on that waiting list. There's a few more people. We're going to do beta tests. We're going to launch it soon. You need to know refrigeration stuff. You need to understand when you're using ChatGPT. Even with Refrigeration Buddy, it's specific. It has all my proprietary content in there and all my refrigeration and all the people who gave me the rights to use their content from different manufacturers all in one place. Refrigerationbuddy.com. Like I said, get on that waiting list. But when you're using, say, ChatGPT, it's a great resource. I use it all the time. You need to understand refrigeration a bit more. And I'll give you a tip for prompts. Okay, so if you use it and you say, hey, what is superheat on a Bitzer CO2 compressor? We'll do an example. Then you write, where did you source this information from? Because all it's doing is gathering tons of different information from the internet at this point. These are called large language models. Just ask that question and see if it can source to the right location. Because I compare it to my refrigeration one, ChatGPT. Mine is just outdoing it all the time. But I'm specifically focused on the commercial refrigeration side to be like more of a mentor and a conversation versus just giving you an answer. It's super important, though, that you do know refrigeration. So ask a different question and then talk with someone about it. So I got this information. Talk to a mentor or someone that knows refrigeration. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think kind of just to sum up with like what Trevor's saying, it shouldn't be the final answer. It should maybe be like kind of like the diving board off of maybe finding potential new questions, new answers, or maybe helping lead you into a different direction.
Yeah, and that's what Refrigeration Buddy is all about. That's why we're trying to build it that way. So it's asking the apprentice or the technician or the journeyman more questions so they can be more curious till you get to the root cause of an issue.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, we have a question in here from Eric, so I'm going to read through it. He asks, what is the talk on reusing R454B after recovery? For example, a Schrader cap was left loose, and let's say 3 lb of an 8 lb charge was lost. Do you charge with fresh or just add the lost amount to the recovered?
Pull it out and put brand new stuff in. That's it. No different. Yeah, no different with any glide refrigerant, even though there's not much glide in some of these ones. I'd have to double check what 454B is, what their glide is on that one. But if it's that small of a charge, you're just pulling it out and putting a new charge in. I would always follow up with the manufacturer. This was one of the things that I did when I worked for the manufacturer, and I found out that was the big thing, fractionation. So all of a sudden you have a high glide refrigerant, it leaked on the low side or the high side. Well, what percentage of that gas leaked out? Because there's some that blends that have 5 refrigerants in. So at different pressures, it boils off at different times. When you have a big system, that's a big deal. So one of the things that I did learn from Honeywell and Chemours and these different chemical manufacturers, they've done tests where they pulled out 50% at a time and then put brand new refrigerant in. And then they showed results that it was 2 or 5% off the capacity. And this is from their studies. And they say it works, just adding fresh refrigerant in it. But I did talk to some technicians who said they've tried that before. The system didn't work very well. They pulled out the whole charge, put a new charge in, and then it worked fine. So you know what I mean? So for me, when that charge, I would pull it out and put brand new stuff in it.
Okay, and then Eric also had a follow-up. So he added, so with R32, like R22, I can just add.
Yeah, because it's a single blend refrigerant.
Perfect. All right. If anyone else has any other questions, I know we have about, 12 minutes. So we've gone through a lot of great content. I know we've had a lot of good discussions even in some of the previous sessions. But if anyone still has anything off the top of their head, any other questions, thoughts, even just, anything out there that you want to ask, this is your opportunity to ask. We do have the Refrigeration Mentor on right now. So this is your good opportunity to ask any additional questions that you may have. And as always, as well, too, if nothing comes to mind right now, as Trevor has alluded to, you see his contact information on the screen as well, too. I'm sure he would, wouldn't mind me saying, reach out to him, contact and get in contact with him. If there's any questions, anything like that. Ooh. All right, so I think, Trevor, was this you that just added this poll in here?
Well, we got to do something to get these people rocking and rolling.
No, for sure. Okay, so yeah, there is a poll that's just been added into the chat, so I just wanted to make sure. All right, we have some responses in there already going on. So the question is, do you do a triple evacuation? So go over there and answer. We'll give it, another minute for people to send in their responses. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? You're not going to get in trouble whether you answer.
No.
There's no, right? Just let us know, because obviously this is kind of just informing Trevor a little bit, just kind of giving some more background information on the people that are listening in on this chat.
Because I've done it both ways. Honestly, I've done both ways. So, and those that haven't done it before, maybe try it. See how, and time it and see how long it takes, and see if it's shorter or longer. And then if it's not, triple evacuation is not for you, then you should be doing triple evacuation, I would say, with A2Ls, A3s.
All right, so right now it's about a 50%. Now it just went. So no's. We have more no's. Well, just slightly edging it out. So, okay, thank you. Yeah, make sure people are still responding and sending in your answers for that question.
If you haven't written the red seal yet, and you're going to be writing the red seal, just pick triple evacuation.
Perfect. Okay, so I think, don't know if there's too many more questions going to be added on, which is okay. I know we've been through quite a lot of information today. Let's see. Yeah, so that poll is ended. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to bring on stage Leah as well, just for the next little bit, just while we wait to see if we have any more questions coming on as we get prepared to do our sign off and close off for this event. So there's another familiar face in there. Yeah, Leah's right there. Perfect.
You all are used to my sniffles already at this point.
I don't know, Leah. Maybe I know I'm going to put you on the spot, but I don't know. Is there anything else? Maybe, do you have anything kind of listening in with Trevor, or even kind of an extended version of the panel that you guys did beforehand? Are there any kind of additional thoughts or questions that maybe you had specifically that you wanted to pick Trevor's brain, or maybe even just, put out there for the audience listening right now?
I don't really have any more questions left on my panel. We actually ended up going through most of our panel questions, which was really good. I was anticipating we'd go a little bit longer. Our chat's already helping me out right now. So I'll read Jacob's question.
Yeah.
Why can't so I don't have to answer one. Why can't the old vacuums be used with 434? I'm thinking you mean 454.
Yeah. So basically, it's the spark. There's potential spark that you can have in the older vac pumps, where the newer ones have to be like spark, like the A2Ls spark. Honestly, like when I started hearing 10, 12 years ago, when A3s were coming in, you're just using your normal vac pump. They didn't even have regulations in place, like it's solid regulations. So what you want to do is make sure there is no you purge that out before you do the evacuation. Make sure you got a leak detector on and you don't have it. And if just say you don't have an A2L approved thing, which you need, make sure that you remove that from site. It's not on. There's no ignition sources when you get that A2L into play. But that's one of the things we want to follow, the standards and codes that do come out. And the only difference is that it could be the exact same pump, but they tested it for A2Ls, right? So follow what the manufacturer that makes the pump, the vac pump, or the recovery unit, and find out if they tested it or not.
Perfect. Thank you again, Jacob, for that question. Yeah, we'll give it another minute and see if anyone else has any other lasting thoughts before we do our sign off and we conclude today's event.
I wanted to actually, the only thing I would mention myself personally is I know Trevor has mentioned a few times about using AI chat. I actually did a little bit of that in my own practice before I ran my panel discussion today, just to kind of run through some of the questions that I was going to ask, and I wanted to get an idea of some of the answers that I'd get so I can get some follow-up questions and stuff. So there are some really cool resources out there. The one that I actually found when I was searching was Hardy, which is an American association, I believe is what I can classify Hardy as. Trevor, are you familiar with them?
Yep.
Is that am I describing them correctly? Are they an association?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. They actually have an A2L like a chat GDP themselves that they've created that I actually had a little bit of fun myself with that I thought was a really cool resource. So I thought that was quite cool. I don't know if we want to mention Eric's before I do a nice little sign off, but his comment only was I pull a fairly quick vacuum on new systems first, then add nitro for the standing pressure test. With digital gauges in tenths of a PSIG, if you have a leak. Pulling the vacuum after letting nitro goes happens way faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could have talked a little bit deeper in that. So pull on a proper evacuation. So go on Jim Bergman, residential evacuation, if anyone's on residential side. He pulls down a 75-foot line set on a new system in less than 3 minutes, I think it was, in evacuation, down below 500. I think it was below 300 microns. So you want to pull the quickest evacuation. Supermarket, big system, small system, biggest hose, one hose from the pump to the system, like the thickness of the hose, so a half inch, 3/8, half inch, 5/8. And True Blue has them, Navac has them, Yellow Jack has specific evacuation hoses. And then, don't go through your gauges ever. And then use a core remover. So you pull the cores out, proper core remover. All the manufacturers that build those tools have them. You're going to pull evacuation 10 times faster than you ever pulled before. Because if you leave the Schraders in there, if you have a 6 CFM pump, you get 1 CFM through the Schraders. If you didn't know that, you learned something new today.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric, for those comments. So, I'm just going to do my mini sign off as well, too, and then we'll kick it off over to Leah. So once again, thank you, Trevor, so much for doing double duty with us as well with the panel discussion and your own solo session. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, as well in the chat for participating as well and for staying throughout the whole event. We really appreciate it. Just see Maxime came in with a little last-minute core remover as a game changer, kind of another thought or a comment that he's adding in there. So thank you for that. And then, so I'm going to hand it over to Leah, and then she's going to do the official sign-off and give you guys some more information about what's to come next.
Awesome. I'm going to just do the stop sharing because I'm going to share my screen in a second. But I just wanted to give a general thank you, everybody, for joining today. This session wouldn't be on if we didn't have you guys coming and wanting to stay educated. So kudos to everybody as well on this call for wanting to stay up to date. Thank you very much. I wanted to give a shout out to... I want to give a shout out. I'm delaying this so I can pull up my screen.
She's vamping.
Yeah, I'm vamping. I don't have to do this very often. So there we go. I wanted to just, where is this? Is it pulling up? It's pulling up.
Yep, you're good.
Am I good? Oh gosh.
Yep.
I hope
that's it.
I can't see myself anymore. Okay. I just wanted to give a shout out to some other additional training. Many of the people that were on our panel discussions, the manufacturers, Mitsubishi Electric, LG, they offer their own additional training as well. I also wanted to give a shout out to HRAI's training as well. They have a low GWP refrigerant safety training. Make sure that you stay up to date on what is going on in the industry. There's a lot of changes going on, as we've heard over the day today. There's a lot of concern and miscommunication about things. So this type of training is very important. So I want to encourage everybody to continue doing so. And thank you very much for joining us today. And we'll hopefully see you out on our next training. Francesco,
Yes, our next
training.
Yes, our next technical training is going to be on June 4th, I believe, and it's going to be on water treatment.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. And then, of course, just a little bit additional sign off as well. Like we said, each of these presentations are going to be posted afterwards on YouTube and also on our website, Training Trades. And they also are going to be featured in the next issue of our magazine. Once again, as well, I know Trevor, he put in a bunch of resources as well, too. So he added in the link to the refrigerationbuddy.com, which I believe is that AI platform that you were talking about that you guys are developing, correct?
Yep.
Perfect. And then, of course, if you guys want to learn more from Trevor as well, visit refrigerationmentor.com. And yeah, so thank you guys again for such a great afternoon of technical training. We appreciate it. And we hope to see you guys at our next technical training session.
Great.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
rest of the day, guys.
Bye.